Hello, everyone. This is Howard Fox, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series, the podcast that celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Barry Maughan is our guest today. Barry is a world traveler and international broadcast journalist. He is an accomplished author. And today we're here to chat about really just a phenomenal series of journey in his lifetime. But more specifically, we're going to talk about his memoir, which was just published. It's called Beneath the African Sun. And this memoir details his personal and professional life during the 6 years he was roaming around this wonderful continent of Africa. So Barry, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Howard, for having me on. And like we say, when you get to be my age, I'm happy to be anywhere.
There you go. It's funny. My the roommate's boyfriend wakes up every day, and I'll say good morning. And he goes, "It is a good morning. I woke up, and I have all my my toes and my fingers, so life is good."
Exactly. You wake up and you're halfway home.
There you go. It's a great day. So I want to thank you for reaching out to me on a website that you and I are both members of, Podmatch, and this is how we connected. And when I saw this photo of you smiling, and I thought, this guy looks like he's pretty nice. And then I saw that you have spent a lot of time traveling around Africa, and I thought, this is a perfect guest for my podcast because I do all of my travels from the comfort of my desk. So I'm a little envious of you there with all the traveling you've done. But I would love, before we talk a little bit about the book, Beneath the African Sun, if you would share a little bit about your background, because it's very, very unique.
Well, 40 years in international broadcasting, I've worked and lived on 4 continents. I've worked for such organizations like Deutsche Welle, Radio Voice of the Gospel in Ethiopia for 6 years, and then moved on to Radio New Zealand, where I was national energy correspondent. And the last 25 years, I was in Washington at the Voice of America, the English to Africa branch, to be precise. And the last 5 years, I was fortunate enough to be chief of that service before retiring. So that, in a nutshell, is my background. I can go on, but that kind of gives you an overview.
Okay, so we're going to do a little kind of deep dives here and there. First, I'm curious, where were you born and raised?
Well, you don't hear from the accent, but I was born in Australia.
Oh, wow.
Good day, mate. Yeah,
G'day.
in Brisbane, Australia, right after Pearl Harbor, which gives away my age. And then came to Canada, and from there to the United States. And I've been here ever since, going back to Australia. Of course, got a lot of relatives down there. But I am a dual Australian-American citizen, but love this country. But as they say, you can take the boy out of Oz, but you can't take Oz out of the boy. So
I love that.
I just love being a citizen of both wonderful countries.
Fantastic. Now I have to share with you, I have been to Brisbane. It's a beautiful city. When I was touring there, my friends lived there. The wife, Renee, was teaching at the University of Queensland. And all I remember is I loved going down the City Cat Ferry because it was free, just going up and down the river. And I thought, well, that's like a free tourism every day, and just a wonderful city.
Well, it's kind of strange, Howard, because I probably look at the city in maybe the same way, because when I was growing up there, none of that ever existed. I mean, I left in 1952, and it was a much, much different city then. It still had the same charm, but it was more of a laid-back, semi-tropical city. And now it's a thriving metropolis. A matter of fact, in about 20 years, they predict that it's going to be the second largest city in Australia after Sydney,
Oh, wow.
bypassing Melbourne.
Okay.
because a lot of people are moving up there because of the climate.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Now, I am curious, one thing I know about Aussies, if I can use that term, rather
Yeah.
than Australians,
Okay.
is I think you were born genetically with this travel bug. Had you always had it, or is this something you were introduced to because of the work that you were doing?
Well, partly, Howard. I must say, jumping ahead a little bit, just to make your point, when we were trekking down from Alexandria, Egypt, to Cape Agulhas, south of Cape Town, South Africa, the most of the people that we met were either Aussies, Kiwis, or Brits.
Okay.
And maybe there's a synergy there because we all came from our lineage from Britain, and I think we just have this in our mindset that we love to see travel, but we like to see it in its rawest state. We like to get out and have adventure along with the travel. So yeah, that's probably there. It was there from the very beginning. It's just that the circumstances led us first to go to Europe and then to spread our wings and want to travel further.
Okay. Now, this book, Beneath the African Sun, details the time early in your life. The photos kind of give away your age just a little bit as well.
I
But how did you end up in Africa and is in just starting to explore and being in journalism? How did you end up there? Did you raise
well,
your
I
hand?
always yes. No, I would almost say that call it the serendipity trip. We were both in jobs in New York City, I in advertising and my wife in another profession. And we were happy, but these were not the jobs that we wanted. And we wanted to make a fresh start. And we both loved traveling. And so we said, well, why don't we just buy a camper bus and travel around Europe? And then we'll come back home and get started. Well, we got to Europe, and then it got to be we were enjoying it, and it got to be winter, and we said, "Well, it's about time for us to find a place where we can kind of enjoy the sunshine." Portugal and Spain were options, but the more we looked into that, very crowded, yada yada yada, and a lot of people kept saying to us, "Hey, Morocco's the place.
Uh,
Morocco's the place." So we figured, oh, we go down there, and we just cross the Straits of Gibraltar, and then we go down to Morocco. But we said, look, there's the wide Mediterranean we want to look. So why don't we do this? Why don't we just get a boat and sail around the Mediterranean, and then we'll take it from there. So we did. Ports of call, Barcelona, the usual places, Beirut when it was really nice, and ended up in Alexandria. And on board, I happened to meet a general. I didn't know where he was from because in that part of the world, there are a lot of generals. And he said, well, whenever you're in Cairo, give us a look. Well,
okay.
that was all right because when we got off, we had then decided that we would drive across the North African littoral to Morocco. Well, we had all the visas, the passage de carnet for the car and the camper. And then the day before we were ready to head west into Libya, a funny thing happened. Muammar Gaddafi and his merry men staged a coup and closed the border.
Oh yeah.
So then the serendipity was, well, we're there in Alexandria. What do we do? Do we turn tail and go back to Europe? That smelt of defeatism. Look, we're close. Why don't we just go down to Cairo? So we get to Cairo, having seen the pyramids, and wow, loved it. And then I said, well, just look, the guy gave me his business card. So let me go and talk to him. So we go in and come to find out this man was Ibrahim El Tahawi, and he was the right hand man to President Gamal Abdel Nasser.
Oh wow.
And when I got ushered into his office, I was like meeting half of the Egyptian cabinet. Mahmoud Fawzi, the war minister. Another guy was the education minister. This guy, this guy. So he said, well, how can I help you? And then he arranged, to cut this short, he arranged one step after another for us to go as far south as Aswan, the southern part of Egypt. And then we made our way step after step after step down to Ethiopia, where I had a friend who had earlier contacted us and says, well, why don't you come on down and stay with us a while? And that's
Yeah.
how I got to Ethiopia. It
Oh,
wasn't planned. It was just one step after another.
that's an amazing story. Now, I want to step back a couple of little signposts here. You mentioned sailing in the Mediterranean. Did you learn how to sail? Was that your first introduction? Well, you lived on an island in the middle of the South Pacific, so I imagine even in Brisbane you might have learned how to sail. But had you had that kind of experience, that kind of comfort, confidence to be able to say, "We're going to have a boat and kind of sail around the Mediterranean a little bit"?
Well, no, in my truncated version, I probably gave the wrong impression. What we did was we were able to find a boat, a liner that would
Oh,
take cars and buses. And
okay,
so Bridget went along for the ride, and it was just us wanting to take in some of the rest of that area of the world before deciding to go overland to Morocco.
okay. Now, by the way, I would have loved Morocco myself because I love Moroccan food, and I
Right.
want to go wherever
Cous-
there's good food.
Oh, couscous, love
Oh, yes.
it.
Now, for our listeners, you mentioned Bridget. This is not your wife. Who is Bridget, or what is Bridget?
Bridget is the nickname we gave to our Combi bus, a Volkswagen Combi bus. Your viewers might want to get a better idea of what a Combi bus is. This one is the one where the lid, it goes up and
Yeah.
there's a sleeping up top, and it's fully decked out with camping gear and the whole thing. And one of the pictures in my book shows my then wife Suzanne sitting on the rear bumper and with 7 of our huge duffel bags, and it was her job to stuff everything in there. So
Okay.
we toured around in Antwerp, took the train down to Wolfsburg, where at the Volkswagen factory, took possession of the Volkswagen Combi, and then proceeded to travel throughout Europe and had a fabulous time, and ended up in Norway. And but it was starting to get cold, and that's when
Yeah.
we decided, "Hmm, we better head south. What do we do then? Do we go back to America, or do we find a nice warmer place to spend the winter?"
Okay. Now, it's not lost on me as you made your way through the Mediterranean to Egypt, potentially going to Libya, and then you have Gaddafi, and then you made your way to back to Egypt and to this general that you had met in Nasser, uh, which had its own politics and issues going on very soon. And you made your way down to Ethiopia. That was also a tumultuous time, which you were introduced to unexpectedly, I would imagine.
Well, the context was that at that time, Egypt was in one of its many wars with Israel, this
Right.
one being the war of attrition. And so it wasn't so easy for foreigners just to traipse around the country. And so, but thanks to my dear friend Ibrahim, uh, who had considerable clout, as you can imagine, we were able to find our way down to Aswan. A matter of fact, Aswan, we were able to travel in first class carriage that he arranged, but our combi bus, Bridget, she had to go several weeks later on a military transport train down there. And he, matter of fact, assigned a guard to to make sure that she arrived there with all her wheels and whatever. And we sat around in Aswan, had a great time. But every day went out and looked. And finally, one day into the rail yard, she came, and there was this guard with an automatic machine gun at hand and sitting on the front bumper. And here she was, and he was up to his word. And she arrived safe and sound. And then we're on our own. And it was kind of like, what do we do now? Because we had the patronage of this chap, but we were then heading on Lake Nasser down to Wadi Halfa in Sudan. And we had to then, of course, make our own way. So, yeah, it was, we could not have done the trip. We would not have had the courage to do the trip in the beginning without the serendipitous meeting of Ibrahim El Tahawi, who kind of got us started. And then it's one of those things, Howard, you get so far in, what do you do now? You just keep on going because it's probably easier that way than going back.
Yeah. And I love the word serendipity because you you were open to this opportunity. It presented itself. You took it. At any point, other than like you kind of said, "What do we do now?" But you kept going. What was the spark that kept you and your wife going? Of like, okay, let's continue to go down. We're going to go to Ethiopia now, and then you're going to continue to travel throughout Africa. What do you think that spark, that energy pack that kept you going down this journey? What was that?
Let me say this, Howard. The book is dedicated to my then wife, Suzanne, because we had an excellent synergy. She was the mathematician and she was the logical one. And so she directed us. Now, you have to understand, Howard, that this is back in the day before all the electronic tethers. There was
Mhm.
no GPS, there was no sat phones, there was no cell phones, there was none of that. So she would look out the window and say, yeah, okay, we're heading south, we're good. Or we have to go there. I was the spruiker, as we say in Australia. I got out and met people, and I ingratiated myself with the locals. And so when we needed help in getting through out of bogs, or to do this or to do that, or to find local knowledge, I was able to do that. So it was a perfect marriage, if you will, between our talents. And we're both determined people. And yeah, there are a lot of rough days, but we just knew if we kept our heads and we reached out and we didn't act um, the big foreigners, then we would find a way. We were determined, and it was just like one day at a time. They have a saying in Africa: how do you find it? How do you eat an elephant ear sandwich? One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
And that's how
Yes.
it was.
Okay. Now, I know from preparing the show notes, there was some children in the mix. Were the children, as you started on this journey, had you had the children, or did you have a child born in Ethiopia or somewhere else? How was their inclusion in this journey, which I would imagine they still can talk about it in somewhere there's a memory of in Africa, but what was it like having kids and continuing on this journey?
Right. Well, how do I put this delicately? Our son Kevin was started in Wadi Halfa when we sat there for 2 weeks with nothing on our hands to do. So by the time we got to Ethiopia, my wife found out that she was indeed pregnant. And so Kevin was born in Ethiopia during my first tour in Ethiopia. And then he was with us the rest of the way south. And he also has a dedication in the book because he was a great little chap. He was our ambassador, and he fascinated people along the way because he was blonde haired, blue eyed, and had no fear of any situation, and almost to the detriment sometimes because we always had to watch him because he was always off exploring. So we formed a good trilogy because uh, we all had our strengths, and we relied on those at times, as noted in a couple of the chapters of the book. That he opened doors when things were getting a little dicey. He made friends, and together we just relied on each other's strengths and just took it a day at a time. But he
Okay.
was he was the first one born in Ethiopia. Then on a second tour, after I we had driven to Cape Agulhas and then sold Bridget. Then I came back for a second tour at the same radio station in Ethiopia, and then our second child, Angeline, was born.
Okay. And she was she born in Ethiopia too then?
She was also born in, both were born in Ethiopia, so they can be Ethiopian citizens if they would like.
I was actually going to ask that question. I mean, it's that's pretty cool. You know, the as you're saying, your blonde hair and blue eyes little boy, and he's also an Ethiopian citizen. That's if he desires, that's pretty cool.
Yes, but
What? Go ahead.
go ahead. No, he actually has three citizenship. They all have, two of them have three. They've got Australian, American, and of course they've got Ethiopian.
I love that. I love that. As you think about this journey, this was over, say, like with two tours in your work, about 7 years total.
6 years, 1969 through 1975. So my first tour was 1969 to 72. And then the second tour was 72 through 75, two separate contracts.
Okay. So I have a, it may come across as a strange question, but so I have I used to be a photographer. I'd shoot weddings when we still had film. I've have a couple graduate degrees, and I have done some international travel. I occasionally wake up at night with sweats. Oh my God, I ran out of film in my camera, or I didn't take that last class, so I really don't have my degrees. So my question is, do you occasionally wake up and you've been dreaming deeply about some experience that you had, let's say whether it was in Africa or some other country, and it's like something you didn't do. It's like I forgot to put gas in the car, or we left Kevin at the in the hotel, or and then you realize, no, wait a minute, that's just a dream. Do you ever wake up and something out of that all the memories you've had, and you kind of you have to remind yourself, no, everything's fine.
Not so much. I try to take each day and get the most out of it. Are there regrets? Yes. I should have covered this story, or I should have detoured further into the Congo and saw so much there. But I think by and large, when it comes to Africa, at least, we took our measure of the continent to the extent that we could. We were always aware of being aware of where we are, being aware of the potential dangers, not so much from the people, but just in general. And so not getting ourselves into particular situations that might lead us to have to abandon the trip overall. But no, when it comes to the African trip, I think we got the most out of it that we could, given the circumstances, because we always bore in mind, yeah, he was a spunky little kid, but he was 1 year old. And we weren't just traveling for ourselves. We were traveling, we had to protect him as well. So
Sure.
maybe some things that we would have done on our own, like climb Kilimanjaro or something like that. Well, that's just not possible. So you had to make some allowances, but we kind of took it to the limits, and I'm happy about that. So I really don't have any regrets about missing out on anything during our time in Africa.
Okay. So another question, just a little bit of a tangent from that is, as you have spent your time traveling in Africa, I imagine the people are just, I think in general, people are wonderful. They're always willing to help. It's when we are arrogant,
Uh,
egotistical, when we're
exactly,
not nice.
exactly, exactly,
And so
exactly.
is there some stories or reminiscence that come to mind? And I'm sure it's in the book in some way of like this story, this memory just gives you the total joy.
Yes, I'm happy you asked, Howard, because yes, overall, the people of Africa are wonderful. When people ask me, "Well, were you afraid?" No, never once with the people. It's the governments crossing borders. You had to be very, very careful. When you came in contact with officialdom, you really had to be careful, especially in Uganda, because this was the era of Idi Amin.
Idi Amin, yeah,
And that don't mess with that situation. But I remember we're in the middle of nowhere in Ethiopia, and we happened upon with my interpreter this family living in a tukul who had tukul's a little hut, little. This was their home,
sure.
and they had next to nothing. But I always like to say, in many, many instances, this one included, folks would give you half of what they don't have. And so we were sharing a meal with them and probably eating food that probably they needed to subsist on for 2 or 3 days. And then we got talking through the interpreter because they spoke no English, and my Amharic, the Ethiopia's national language, was kitchen Amharic, taking little words like "inshirafalagado," um, take out the firewood, please. Anyway, but so through the interpreter, I asked basic questions, and I learned the humanity of man is the same regardless. You might have cultural or ethnic or religious differences, but I learned they wanted the same thing for their children as we wanted for ours. They wanted 3 square meals on the table each day. They wanted safety for themselves, as little intrusion from the national government as possible. And they didn't want their sons being sent off to some foreign war to die.
Mm.
And I thought, wow, we have a lot in common. I might be just passing through with an interpreter and a combi bus and whatever, and but I like the cut of this guy's jib. I really enjoyed speaking to them because I just felt like there was a synergy there. And
I
so,
love that.
yes, that's and so many instances of this, Howard, that I just felt as one with these people who would come out of their villages when we were stuck, going from Ethiopia to Kenya in this thick chica soil where we was bogged up to the rim. And they would come out of their villages and just joyfully push, help us. And then I would try to give them something. No, 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 no. They were just happy to do it for you. And it was time and time again. I would like to say, and you put it so well, we didn't act arrogant. We didn't act better than them. We were very grateful. We were humble for their help, but it was always forthcoming in those instances. So I have a lot of people say, well, maybe you should put some other stuff in. I can't put stuff in a book that I didn't experience. It was a wonderful experience as long as we comported ourselves as visitors to their continent.
Okay.
And the only ones I saw get into trouble were the arrogant ones. And if you put yourself in that situation, then most of those people did not make it very far.
Okay. As you were engaged in your travels and as a journalist, there is a there is a desire get to have conversations, to gather information, to discern fact from fiction, tell a good story. What were the challenges for you, or opportunities for you as a journalist, and helping you gather the information and tell your story? How did that help you and with this overall experience during your travels as a journalist?
Well, one of my editors said, well, you should have made two books out of this: the travel, the length of the continent, and then your time in Ethiopia. My time in Ethiopia made my career. I got, I was only one of four journalists embedded in Ethiopia during the entire coup that ultimately toppled Emperor Haile Selassie. And that's many, many stories. We don't have the time, but that was a time fraught with danger. It taught you how to be very, very precise in your language, because in the beginning, the emperor was still in power, and every word that I would be sending either to the Financial Times or the Voice of America or New Zealand Broadcasting was being scrutinized one floor up in the Ministry of Information offices. But I had to be true to my profession, but I also had to stay embedded at the request of the people that I was working for, um, not to get thrown out of the country. And so that taught me how to craft things in a way that got the message through, but in a way that would not get me either thrown in jail or thrown out of the country. I also learned that as a journalist, you have an obligation to put yourself on the line when maybe your employers, in this case, Radio Voice of the Gospel, would have rather you not covered. The emperor thought that Ethiopia was the Garden of Eden. Nothing bad happened. Radio Voice of the Gospel was operating there under the auspices of the emperor. Well, about 300 miles north in Wallo province in 1975, there was a horrific drought and hundreds of thousands of people were dying. Two or three of us decided on our own separately that we had an obligation to cover that. We didn't make a lot of money. It wasn't vainglorious. It was, as a journalist, we could not sit 300 miles south and not cover that story. Mm-hmm. So a couple of my chapters show how I managed to get up there and to bring the story in words to the world. But I must say, in all humility, it was then Jonathan Dimbleby of the BBC with television. The power of that brought it and blew the lid off. And we managed not to get thrown out of the country because of it, because at this point the emperor was just about toppled. But I felt good that I put myself on the line to do what I believe a journalist should do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And part of me wants to ask you, compare what you were doing back in the 60s and 70s to journalism today, and I really don't want to go there because it's an unfair comparison.
Yeah,
it's an unfair comparison. How
standards are different, and I don't think they're for the better today. Let me just put it this way. You might have got the impression by what I just said about the drought in Wallo that I wanted to make myself bigger than the story or equal with the story. No. A journalist is the eyes and ears of his audience.
Sure.
Therefore, what I see today is a lot of journalists trying to be as big as the story they're covering or bigger. And that's what really galls me. That's not a journalist's role. Your role is just to be, like I said, the eyes and ears for your listeners or for your viewers or whatever. You're not the story. And I was happy that I always held to this. And I held to this to the day I retired in 2000 after 40 years of journalism. And I still write today. And whatever medium I'm writing for, I always try to bear that in mind.
Sure. No, I love that. And I totally appreciate that because too much going on. And it's a struggle for me as I get older because some of the great folks we know were writing and on TV that we respected. And okay, so I don't want to go there. We want to celebrate this journey that you were on. Eh, When you left Africa, had you had an opportunity to go back and explore, perhaps reacquaint yourself with some of the people whose path and families whose paths you crossed?
I went back to Ethiopia specifically in 1985, and it's the old saying, you can never go back.
Mm,
And most of the people that I uh, ran with had either gone back to their home country because most of the journalists that I was working with are expats, most from Britain, a lot from the United States, and they had gone their own separate ways. We still, the ones who are still alive, we still stay in contact with. But no, Addis has grown into a mega city. A lot of the areas that I lived and worked and have been either torn down or I just didn't recognize them. So that was a kind of a hollow experience. Now, in broadcasting to Africa for 25 years over the Voice of America, I got to travel to various parts of the continent, not necessarily East Africa, but to West Africa and whatever. And that was always a very gratifying feeling because Africa has a vibrancy about it. It sometimes can't get out of its own way, but they're striving for something that maybe was alive more in this country maybe 100 years ago, 150 years ago. And I just love the people, the length and breadth of Africa. And I think that's how I connected with them. My broadcast to Africa, I was never me talking down to them. It was always just trying to meet them at their own level or making self deprecating jokes about my lack of hair or my paunch or whatever, and joking and, of course, throwing in what we needed to throw in. But I think that my experience on the continent, living and working on the continent, has always held me in good stead in that career, but just in general, just to meet people on their level and just to laugh. And yes, we all have to cry sometimes, but when you can laugh and be happy and just to have a camaraderie with people. And I was able to do that as I see from you that even though I'm not reaching out and touching them, but you can communicate. People know when you have a passion for your work.
sure.
And I think that's what's lacking today also in journalism. I think a lot of them are just in it for the money.
Sure.
And listeners can tell, viewers
Mhm.
can tell when you've got a passion for your work. And
Sure.
it's this je ne sais quoi that and you can't put your finger on it, but it's there, Howard.
It,
It's there.
it's there. And I can't help but feeling too that these are the lessons to take away from this conversation is the authenticity, being genuine, being curious, caring about your work and the people who you are coming across without any ulterior motive of sort.
Yes, just meet people where they are, how they are, try to get a sense of their aspirations in life, trying to uplift them whenever you can. Because, not to be cynical, but if you approach a person that way, you're likely to get more of the information that you want. If you
Mhm.
come at them from a certain angle, and you're not that way, and they don't feel like they can connect with you, then they're less likely to give you the information that you want. And this is the way it was in Ethiopia, at least when I was working there. Is you go out, and some journalists who were not that way inclined, they would come back and say, "Oh, there's no story there," and then you'd come back and you'd have a great story
Mhm.
because it's just the way you handle people.
Sure.
And if I had one thing to tell neophyte journalists today, is bear that in mind. Just try to understand who you're interviewing,
Okay.
and don't come across as the big know-it-all.
I love it. So I am a little bit of a tangent, and I ask this often when I interview destinations or chambers of commerce. And I love good food and I love good coffee. And just knowing that you were in Africa, north to south and east to west, you were around a lot of good coffee. What were some of the memorable meals that you
Oh, well,
experienced?
uh, well, in Ethiopia, you're talking about the homeland of coffee.
Yes.
Kaffa province is where coffee originated, and they had a wonderful, in the Amharic word for coffee is buna,
Mhm.
Boona, buna. And they have the English have their 4 o'clock tea ritual. They have a Buna ritual where it would be brought out and actually brewed in front of you, and then you'd have these beautiful little cups, and then you would sip it, and it's like no experience in the world. But the Ethiopian cuisine is amazing, and I always seek out Ethiopian restaurants here in the States because since they've the staple of Ethiopian food is a flat pancake called injera,
Injera, yeah.
Injera. But it has to be made from a grain called teff,
Yes.
Teff, which only grows at very high altitudes. Well, in the beginning, you go to an Ethiopian restaurant over here, and it would be served on little more than a pancake. That didn't do it because teff has a kind of well, I think you're nodding your head. You know what I'm talking about. Has a kind of like a bitter, nutty taste to it. Well, some entrepreneur had the idea, hey, Colorado's got altitudes similar to Addison, 10, 12,000 feet. They grew teff up there and then started supplying it to the Ethiopian restaurant. Well, to me, it's just fantastic. You lay down your teff, a thin layer of like a pancake, a teff pancake, and then you would put duro wat. A wat is a kind of a stew, and duro is chicken, but chicken eggs and bits of chicken. So you'd have one area on a big plate, uh, served in an injera basket, which we have in our home here, injera basket. And then you would have tibs, which are just pieces of meat in a stew. And then aliche, which would be vegetables. And then, but then you would just, with your hands, before you wash them first, and then you just break off the teff, and you would pick up a little bit of the chicken and whatever. But the lovely part of it is if you're really, really friends with someone, you do something called gosha. And gosha is you pick up some of this and then you feed the other person. The other person opens their mouth and you feed them some of your food. But it's communal. So you're all eating out of this vast pancake, and they will have their quadrant, you'll have your quadrant and whatever, and you're just eating away and talking. It's a very social occasion.
I love it. By the way,
And
you're making me hungry right now.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love
Oh,
it.
fantastic.
Fantastic.
So, what has been the reaction to your book, Beneath the African Sun, since it was released in May? What's been the feedback you've been getting?
I'm humbly gratified. I very quickly, Howard. First, it was okay. We did this. I want my children and my grandchildren and their forebears to know about it. So I'll just type out a few pages, uh, print it out, go down to Kinko's or Staples and put it in a binder, and then I'll distribute 20 or 30 copies to my close friends and relatives. And then I got into it. And now I must say, up until 2 or 3 days ago, it was the number one seller on Amazon in 4 genres
Mm.
and 31 reviews with a 4.7 out of 5 rating and selling quite well. And I'm just, I'm gratified. I'm gratified not necessarily for monetary reasons. I'm gratified that people are learning about more about a fantastic continent, fantastic peoples, and I'm gratified that my portrayal of my life there uh, did not come across as mondo carne, something bizarre or whatever. It's coming across as maybe, hey, I want to go there or whatever, not do the same things, travel overland, but I want to go on a safari and I want to see Kilimanjaro. I want to see Victoria Falls. And that can only help the continent grow. So I owe a great gratitude to that marvelous continent and its peoples because uh, they they treated me well, they treated my family well, and I'm here to tell the tale. Now, did I get some of the tropical diseases? Yeah, I've got a benign form of malaria that comes back every now and then, leishmaniasis, sleeping sickness of sorts, and typhoid and typhus and all that. Hey, that's just part of living there. Yeah, that's nothing that they wished on me. Matter of fact, most would wish that they didn't have it either. But I'm in love with the peoples of Africa, whether they be north, south, southern, eastern, because by and large they're just wonderful folks. Now, I did travel there 50 years ago, and people say to me, "Would you do it today?" I said, "No," but for reasons that maybe are not apparent at the beginning. One, it wouldn't be as the adventure that it was because of the electronic tethers and
Right.
whatever. Two, uh, times change and situations change. I think the people are the same, but I don't know if would it's as easy to travel from country to country nowadays. But no, I'm happy to reflect on a journey taken 50 years ago. And you let the book speak for itself because I'm very happy through the folks at My Word Publishing that it's turned out the way it is. And they've been just fantastic in the not only in the production and the editing and all that, but the marketing. And so it's been a wonderful experience. And now I'm getting ready for my next one, Howard. You'll have to have me back on in a year or so. It's about my circumnavigation of my homeland of Australia in a camper bus.
I would love to have you back on when that book is published because I love the fact of being a nomad and just traveling around and literally with I shared with you my work but in addition to podcasting and the benefit
Yes,
of that profession, these professions is I can do it anywhere. And so the
right.
idea of the VW Combi, I could have my own Bridget, and I'll get to come up with a name. But I was just that would have to be just an enjoyable experience, and I most certainly want to hear about circumnavigating Australia when the book is out. And really, we want to congratulate you on this book, Beneath the African Sun, and I hope in my lifetime to visit Africa someday.
Howard, could I just jump in here? And my last mantra, if you will, and this is overarching, and I think that this sums it up.
Okay.
If folks in general would do more travel around the world and see the humanity like we're all in this together, and
Yes.
we'd have far less trouble in the world if people would do this. I mean, that's that. If you remember one thing that I said, that's it. Get out and travel and meet people and eat different kinds of food and experience different things. Go to India, go to Thailand, go to Australia, go anywhere, because that's how you grow as a person. And
Yeah.
that's how a lot of your inborn prejudices just melt away. Oh, I didn't know it was like that. Because you hadn't been. But
Mhm.
when you're there, all these things fall away. And you just see like you're at one wherever you go.
Mhm. That I have to say, Barry, that is the big takeaway for me. And you have lived a wonderful and are living a wonderful life in the experiences that you've had, and you've embarked on adventures that people perhaps don't even want to think about. They don't think about outside of their city, their county, their state.
But
And if we were to just get out and break bread and meet people, have conversations, the world would be a better place. And I love the way
amen.
you just shared that.
Amen. I couldn't agree more, Howard. And I would like to laud you for through your medium that you are spreading the word of just exactly that. And people listening to you as they read my book, Beneath the African Sun, they will get imbued with the spirit of, hey, travel is great. Why don't we go out and do more,
Yep.
even within this country? If you're from New Hampshire, go down Louisiana, visit New Orleans. If you're in New Orleans, go visit maybe Seattle or whatever. Just get out and meet people from different parts because it's life altering. It's life changing.
I love it. I share something with you after this episode is over. I have a conversation that I have weekly with a colleague of mine. We do check in with each other, but I also roast my own coffee, and the coffee I
Oh,
roasted this week was it lasts a pound lasts me for about a week. It was Ethiopian, so I'm going to go have and I know it's probably my last because I have to roast some more, a nice cup of Ethiopian coffee and to celebrate this episode with you today, Barry. So I want you to know that.
okay. Hey, and from now on, don't call it coffee. You call it Buna.
Buna.
Buna. And then you're really drinking Ethiopian coffee if you call it Buna. Boona. Buna.
I love it. I love it. Listen, before we head out, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places to go?
Now, of course, Facebook and Instagram, you can find me there. I have my own website, Barry Maughan, BarryMaughan, one word, .com. And of course, I'm found on Beneath the African Sun is on in Amazon and Goodreads and many, many, many other outlets. And I would humbly ask you to give it a try. I think you're going to enjoy it because, judging from the reaction so far, a lot of people are doing just that. They're enjoying the read.
I love it. And we will most definitely have in our show notes links back to the website and the show notes, and we'll have a link back to the sites like Amazon and Goodread to pick up a copy. Barry, it's been, and I say this a lot, and I mean it a lot, but it has been a pleasure to have you on the podcast and just to meet and get to know you, to hear the story. And really, there is a little bit of envy here, but it's like, something I still have a long runway ahead of me. I'm going to get to Africa. I'm going to enjoy some good coffee at a cafe, and I'm going to really celebrate conversations like you and I are having today. So thank you.
And Howard, as we journalists say to each other, more grease to your elbow, mate.
More grease to your elbow. I love it. And we will see you back when you finish your next book about circumnavigating the Australian
And
continent.
Howard, if I can do anything to help you, you know how to reach me.
All right. Barry, thank you for your time. Listen, stay in the line. We're going to do a very quick close, and then you and I can have a final chat, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right, folks. We have just been chatting with Barry Maughan. He is a international world traveler, international broadcast journalist. We are chatting today really to celebrate his new book, Beneath the African Sun, which details his personal and professional life with his wife and kids during the years that they were setting foot and wandering and working around the African continent. Really just an accomplished career as a journalist, and really some wonderful stories. And really, what I love about our conversation today was the importance of understanding and appreciating the humanity of getting to know people, getting to know other cultures, going in there with curiosity as opposed to, well, why don't they do things my way? Whenever you travel, whether it's here in the US, another country, it's an opportunity to live and explore and to be curious. So we do hope you take away that from this episode. Do go out to the book sites, pick up your copy of Beneath the African Sun. We'll provide backlinks to those sites on our show notes. We'll have give you a link to Barry's website, barrymaughn.com, as well as to his Facebook and Instagram pages. We also want to thank our good friends at Podmatch for helping to make this introduction, and we wish Barry the very best and for this book and any of his future writings. Now, as for us, you can find this episode on our website, outdooradventureseries.com. We are also on LinkedIn and Facebook with our Outdoor Adventure Series pages. The video of this episode will be up on our YouTube channel. And of course, you can listen to this episode wherever you get your podcast from. And remember, we love likes, comments, and sharing. Until next time, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a fantastic day. And we look forward to having you join us on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.